So in this lecture, we are going to look at the molecular orbital diagram for beryllium hydride, BeH2. We'll see that even though it has basically the same formula as water, it's an AXN where N is 2 type chemical formula. BeH2 is linear where we had the bent structure for H2O. And this is going to set us up to look at differences between the linear and bent structures in the next installment, lecture 5E. But before that, let's go ahead and look at the MO diagram for BeH2. So just like before, we have an AXN molecule with a central atom A, which is beryllium here, and pendant atoms X. And we have just a linear arrangement there, X, A, X. Same as before with the water, we want to make linear combinations of atomic orbitals that are compatible with the symmetry of the molecule. And so we're going to form molecular orbitals using the atomic orbitals of the central atom along with sulks of the pendant atoms, again, H2 here, that have a similar symmetry and energy. They actually have the same symmetry, similar energy. So first thing we need to do, again, identify the point group. When we go through the point group flow chart, we see that BeH2 is linear. We can get that from Vesper, and we see that we have a D infinity H point group, very common with linear molecules where the two pendant atoms are the same. Next, we need to make sulks of the pendant atoms, those hydrogen atoms. So the H atoms, again, have only those s orbitals, and so we have that vector, not really a vector, but you can think of it as a vector of that bond going towards that central atom. So we're just going to have sigma bonds only, and they're going to be directional, just like we had with water. So let's go ahead and go through our table here. You'll notice the table looks a little bit different. We've got some complex things. We're going to ignore these labels right here. We're going to focus on the sigmas and the pi's for our labels. So here we've got our hydrogen 1 and hydrogen 2 set up. Remember for the water that they were in a bent structure, so they were down here, whereas here for the beryllium hydride, we have them in a linear format. Now we need to find the reducible representations of the symmetry of the orbitals on the pendant atoms. And so for D infinity H, we have quite a few more operations than we did for C2V. Again, we just take a look at what happens to the H's when we do these operations on them. So for an E, everything remains the same. So H1 is H1 and H2 is H2. So that gives me a 2. I have an infinite number of C2s here, and they run perpendicular to this axis, but I could make a circle of perpendicular axes around here to rotate that molecule around. And so I have an infinite number of 180 degrees C2 operations I can do. However, every time I do any of them, the H2 is going to become H1, H1 is going to become H2, and so we end up with a 0 for our trace. Now I have two C infinity Phs, and that's a little bit odd lettering or an odd label there. The key there is to look at the C infinity. And the reason we have a C infinity is because of this linear molecule. So if we think of the axis that runs through here, it's not a very straight axis. Let me see if I can draw a better one. Here we go. I can rotate that an infinitesimally small number of degrees and still eventually come back to the beginning. And so I can divide the 360 by anything. And if I do it that many times, I'm always going to end up in the same place because nothing's going to change between the H1 and the H2, no matter how much I rotate or how little I rotate that. So it's a C infinity rotational axis. And there's two of them because I can go either clockwise or counterclockwise. For our inversion, if I do an inversion, we get a trace of 0, and that's because H2 will become H1, H1 will become H2. there's a sigma V, and so that is 2 because I can have that mirror plane there, and the H1, the front half of the H1 goes back onto the other part of the H2 or H1, and H2 go onto the H2, and there's an infinite number of them. Again, because we have this linear molecule, I can draw this particular mirror plane anywhere along this axis, tilted at any angle while still being parallel to this axis, and I will still have a mirror plane. So I have an infinite number of mirror planes, and every one of them reflects H1 onto H1 and H2 onto H2. And so it has a trace of 2, but I have an infinite number of them. And then I have the S infinity, where you are doing a rotation followed by a reflection. The reflection would be through that mirror plane there. So it's S infinity because I can rotate any number of degrees. It goes along with that C infinity. But as soon as I reflect it to the other side, H2 becomes H1, H1 becomes H2. And so I end up with a 0 trace. So we have our reducible representation of 2, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0. And we want to come up with our irreducible representation. We want to come up with our sulks as described by these. And so I want to find the sum of these values that come up with this. Now, in the last example, we used a projection operator where we had, we started our calculation with 1 over h, and then we had all those numbers in there that came from the coefficients, they came from these values, and they came from here. Well, the problem sets in right there with that 1 over h, because our h is infinity, because we have 1e, but we have infinity C2s, we have infinity sigma v's. And so my h here is infinity, and if I do 1 over infinity, well, the math just won't work out. And so we're unable to use the projection operator in the same equation that we used for water. We have a couple of options at this point. I'm going to choose the one I feel is the easiest for a fairly basic molecule. And that is to look for 2 or more sets. It's usually 2 sets of representations here that add up to my reducible representation here. You almost always have an A1G or a sigma G plus, as we have here. And so if we can just find something that adds to this group that will create this set of values, then we should be okay. And if we do that, we end up with sigma G plus and sigma U plus. And we can see if we add those together, it's just the A1G and the A1U. I get 1 plus 1 is 2. I get 1 plus minus 1 is 0. 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus minus 1 is 0. 1 plus 1 is 2. And 1 plus minus 1 is 0. Like I said, there is another method that would allow you to use the projection operator. It involves looking at a lower symmetry molecule, which for us would be a D2H molecule, and then just going through our projection operator calculation again that we did here, and then taking the representations from the D2H using something that's called a correlation table and saying, okay, what does that representation correlate to in the D infinity H? It's a little more complex. If it's something you want to see, I encourage you to come chat with me in my office, and we'll see if we can go through it together. But for now, we just used an inspection method. It works well with this one because it's a fairly straightforward deconstruction. So we have a sigma G plus plus a sigma U plus. So we look at our table for our orbitals for our sulks. And for D infinity H, we have a sigma G, we have our sigma U right here. And so we have the symmetry here and the symmetry here, just like we had For the water, it looks very similar. The only difference is these are in a linear arrangement, whereas the C2V was in a bent arrangement. So let's go through and create our molecular orbital diagram. So we have our SALCs over here, sigma G plus sigma U plus. Same thing applies here, especially with that linear molecule. These orbitals are too far apart to interact, so we don't have to worry about them interacting with each other. We do have to go through and find the symmetries of the different orbitals. So we see that we have our sigma G plus here for our 2s, and we have pi u and sigma u plus for these. Again, you can get these either by going through the different operations in the character table, or you can look up the various atomic orbitals in the character table as well. We can go back. I do want to point out here, since we have a pi indicates that we have two orbitals that are degenerate, which means they have the exact same energy. So we can go back and take a look at our table here. So here we see that the PZ is an A1U, and we see that the PX and PY, because they're in parentheses, it indicates that they are degenerate and they have a pi U symmetry. Now we see where these two values come from. We have our EG plus, and again, same as what we do with the water. We want things with a similar energy and the same symmetry. So we have an EG plus, we have an EG plus here, we have an EU plus in here, we have an EU plus here. So we do have things that can combine. We have a pi U here. There is no pi U's over here, so this is going to be a source of non-bonding orbitals here. Let's go ahead and match and draw what we've got. So the sigma G plus and our sigma G plus is going to be these two right here. So this is going to be hydrogen, beryllium, and hydrogen. And let me go ahead and write that out. So we've got hydrogen, beryllium, hydrogen. There we go. And so we've got our orbital there. It's going to do an anti-bonding orbital here. We're just going to change the sign of the s orbital on that central atom to create anti-bonding. And so that's going to go up in energy there. For our sigma U plus, so we've got our sigma U plus here, our sigma U plus here, and notice we've got a bonding interaction here with, that's going to be your PZ, and the other lobe of the PZ has a different phase, as same as we have with the sigma U plus SALCs for the hydrogens. So that's going to be bonding. They will also form an anti-bonding. Again, we'll just flip the signs on the p orbital here, and we see we have anti-bonding and anti-bonding there as well. And so that's going to increase the energy. We have our two non-bonding orbitals that don't interact with anything simply because they lack the symmetry to do so, and so they go straight across in energy. If we go through and look at the symmetry of each of these molecular orbitals here, we see that this one is a sigma G plus. They're going to have the labels that we have with the D infinity H group, point group, or character table. So we have sigma G plus, sigma U plus, still pi U, sigma G plus star, and sigma U plus star. If we fill in the electrons, your beryllium has 2 valence electrons. Each of the hydrogens have 1 valence electron. And so we fill in our 4 electrons and we get something like that. And that would correspond to the 2 bonds that we have in beryllium hydride. And there's no lone pairs. So we write our electron configuration as 1 sigma G plus 2 electrons, and 1 sigma U plus 2. We haven't talked much about the numbering. So this is based on, this is the first occurrence of the sigma G plus. This is the first occurrence of the sigma U plus. First occurrence of the pi U. This is the second occurrence of a sigma G plus and the second occurrence of a sigma U plus. Sometimes these numberings might start with 2. We saw that with the water. That just means that they also numbered the 1s orbital that would not be bonding those core electrons for the oxygen in water. Here we didn't do that, and so we just started with one. You'll see different labeling in different places.